Hello, my name is Michele, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Welcome to 2022. This year, we're going to focus on metrics in our companies and identifying what metrics are, what we need, and how to go about monitoring them is going to be the focus of today's podcast. Last year, it was all about strategy, and this year, it's all about how to make that strategy work. Listen in for tips and tricks that will help you determine if you're still on task or not. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Every year I choose a word and a focus. In 2019, my focus was marketing, and the word was intentional. In 2020, my focus was adapting and codifying my aim with intent methodology, and the word was grace. And goodness knows we had to heap loads of grace on everything in the year 2020. 2021 brought new challenges, and my focus was on building strategic plans. My word last year was ease. How do we scale with ease was the biggest question that I worked through and tackled in my company and offerings. Now, in 2022, my focus is on metrics, and the word for the year is analysis. This last year, I have helped many of you begin a strategic plan or formalize one either through listening to this podcast or in my coaching program. And one of the most important sections in a strategic plan is where you create metrics to aim for as you grow in your business. And while creating these measurements needs to be done, what's most important is actually measuring to that measuring stick. When I was a young girl, I can distinctly remember going to my grandmother's house each year around my birthday and standing against a piece of wood paneling in her kitchen where we would be measured. A line was drawn on the board panel with an ink pen right above our head, and then we would note our name, our age, and the date. My grandparents and parents had their measurements on there too from years back, in addition to my aunts and uncles, my cousins, and my sister. Later, when I had kids, they were measured on that same wall panel. And since we were all measuring in the same place in the same way, we could easily see the progress of our growth year over year. If we had been measuring differently or measuring all over the house in different rooms, the progress would have been much more difficult to read and understand. I can even remember sometimes us begging to let us keep our shoes on because we knew it might give us an extra half an inch. But the rules were the same. You had to take your shoes off, be in your sock feet or barefoot with your heels back up against the wall. And that's how they would measure. And for those of us that grew up in the 80s, they had to smush our hair down. So we didn't get to count the extra inches from our hairspray where our hair was way up. But that's what made it equal. And that's what made it easier for us to compare our height and our growth from ourselves and from others. When my grandmother sold her home and moved into a nursing home, we went in and removed that wood panel in her kitchen before we sold the house. And we moved it to my mom's house where we can continue measuring our kids and our grandkids. And the same principle holds true in business. We need to determine what we're going to measure, when we're going to measure it, how we're going to do that, and when are we going to review what we have measured. And this might sound like a lot of work, but it really doesn't have to be. A metric is, simply stated, a standard of measurement. In business, we use three basic measurements: time, money, and status. Let's start with time. We measure time on our calendars. So if we set a goal that we're measuring using time, we might look at how long something will take in hours, or look at a due date, or maybe even look at how long a project or a phase might last over a time period. When we're all using the same standards of measurement, it makes checking in more consistent. One of the areas that you'll hear productivity coaches or advisors talk about is understanding time. If any of you have tried to guesstimate how long something will take, you know, like I do, that it's easy to underestimate. And this is why it's so very important to create time budgets for projects and then measure to them with time tracking, both in the amount of time the task took, as well as measuring to a completion date. Keeping up with your hourly tracking can provide a wealth of knowledge as you analyze what's working and what's not working in your firm. And this is a big area that's easy to overlook. The second area of measurement is money. We measure the dollars that the business brings into the firm in revenue and the cost associated with that work and cost of goods and expenses. These measurements will be considered in both dollar amounts as well as percentages or margins. We may even create budgets for the year and then measure each budgeted area against the initial value that we set. Perhaps we're measuring the return on an investment of a marketing piece. We certainly measure the project budgets we create for and with our clients to ensure that their money is being spent properly. And hopefully we're measuring our accounts receivable and accounts payable so we can stay on top of what we owe and who owes us. And that way we remain cash flow positive. The last area that we measure to is status. This could be a status of complete or incomplete. It could be a status of in progress or showing improvement. Typically, it's measuring something that is not money or time. So this could be a measurement of attitude or other character trait or value that you're wanting to have exhibited in your firm. When we create measurements around a task, an item, a sale, or anything, it's because we think that knowing how we are meeting or exceeding the expectations of that activity will help us continue to provide excellent service and revenues. And if we're measuring things that don't matter to us just because we think we should, we'll become quickly bored. We won't measure it. And then we'll think that measurements are slowing us down or that it's a wasted, thing to do. And we'll just put it to the side and ignore it. Each person on your team should have something that they're measuring within their job description, and they should know how that action or activity will generate profits for the company. Everyone in a team impacts profits. When you consider areas of waste in a firm, each person and how they use the resources can impact the over or underuse of that resource. And so when we really grasp how our work is measured and we buy into seeing improvement or even just meeting a goal, then measuring will be much easier to do. In corporate environments, often each area of a company is tied to some area or section of the P&L, and the management is responsible for monitoring to that section of the income statement. It's clear to them that how they conduct business matters. And the best of those managers, they invite their team into understanding the impact of their specific role on the finances of the company. I like to start with a few simple financial measurements. And I've shared these before, but I'll list them out for you again. Something just as simple as this: total revenue, cost of goods sold, gross profit, expenses, net profit, actuals versus budget for the month based on my P&L, and perhaps project actuals and budgets, along with AR and AP numbers. As I'm reviewing my strategic plans, I usually look for 3 areas that I always want to consider: people, processes, and profits. You may recognize those as the AIM portion of AIM with Intent. What do these measurements look like for each area? You might even consider taking one process to focus on each quarter and measuring to that process in one of the 3 ways described earlier. Focusing on one process to tighten and button it up, fix any holes or cracks that have developed over time, or identify what might be missing or could be added to make it work better, allows you to truly give focus to that one area and then measure to those improvements. The next quarter, choose another process to improve and then measure to that. Our human talent is measured based on performance and education plans. Create these metrics with your team members and help them measure themselves to the improvements they're making in their job. Learning new things and growing in our careers keeps us all moving forward. And when we're in a stale job with no option to learn or grow, that's a quick way to stunt an employee, a team, and then ultimately a company. So job descriptions are a really huge asset as people are looking to attain the next higher level position. And it gives them a clear measurement for what is needed in that role. It also gives you a clear measurement as a hiring manager or as the owner to see if they're meeting that particular role before you give them, a bump in pay or even a new job title or role. Measuring client success and outcomes could be another focus. Again, all of this should tie into your firm strategy. Being clear on what you want to accomplish and by when, and then putting measurements around the steps or the incremental improvements will keep you and your team moving forward together. It is so easy to lose sight of the small incremental improvements if we're not measuring and watching. We easily can always look at what we've not done and where the gap is. And so measuring these small gains as we go keeps us energized in the direction that we're headed. As we're beginning this new year, determine where you want to focus. If at the end of this year, your firm can improve in 3 to 4 areas of your company, what would that be? Identify them and then write out what you would need to measure to capture that improvement. Then take a baseline, add in some action steps, and measure improvement. At the end of the year, you'll be amazed because what you focus on increases. Remember that saying, you get what you inspect, not what you expect. In my coaching program this year, we're going to be focusing on focus. We're going to be focusing on metrics. And that's just how we're going to roll. If you want a team to support you, strengthen your business understanding, and keep you accountable, go to our Work With Me page on the website at scarletthreadconsulting.com and apply for a discovery call. My team and I, we totally geek out over all of this, and we would be more than jazzed to help you see the power in measuring. Be clear and confident in where you're going because you won't get there by accident. Success is intentional, and so is profitability. Profit is a Choice is proud to be part of the designnetwork.org, where you can discover more design media reaching creative listeners. Thanks for listening, and stay creative and business-minded.